कि जिसकी सरकार सेंटर में हुई है उसी की सरकार प्रदेश में होती है।
एंटी इनकम्बेंसी को कैसे देख रहे हैं? इनकम्बेंसी नहीं है,
प्रो इनकम्बेंसी।
कांग्रेस आ रही है, भाजपा जा रही है।
Congress is going to form the government in Haryana with a big majority.
From the heart of city in Beirut, a city which is scarred by violence and caught between the crossfire between Israel and Hezbollah. A war which started a year ago between Israel and Hamas has now spilled over.
You are watching The World 24/7 on the NDTV network. I'm Parmeshwar Bava. We've got a whole lot lined up for you over the next half an hour. Let's begin with the headlines we're tracking currently. Israel will hold memorials for the first anniversary of the October 7 attacks as the war it launched in response escalates on two fronts, with heavy bombing raids and mass evacuation orders issued in Lebanon and Gaza amid the growing possibility of a retaliatory airstrike against Iran. Maldives President Mohammad Muizzu landed in Delhi on Sunday for a 4-day state visit to India and is expected to meet Prime Minister Modi today with a looming economic crisis and an imminent debt repayment on his hands back home. China and North Korea pledged a new chapter in their relationship on the 75th anniversary of establishing diplomatic ties. The renewed alignment comes as the West becomes increasingly vocal about China's military links to North Korea, Russia and Iran, an allegiance many have dubbed the axis of evil, echoing former US President George W. Bush. Pakistan's former foreign minister has termed External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar's upcoming visit to Islamabad a positive development. India announced that Dr. Jaishankar would lead a delegation to Pakistan to participate in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit scheduled to take place on the 15th and 16th of this month in Islamabad. Swiss watch exports to India rose 20% year-on-year in the first 7 months of 2024. The value of exports has grown by a record 41% compared to the same period in 2022, driven by India's rapidly increasing number of multi-millionaires. And 2 Chinese nationals have been killed near Pakistan's Karachi airport. Well, our big focus, Israel is preparing to hold memorials today to mark the first anniversary of the October 7 attacks by Hamas, a day that changed the region forever. Tensions continue to escalate on multiple fronts as we've been reporting. Israel bombarded Beirut in what appeared to be its heaviest assault yet on the Lebanese capital on the eve of the one-year anniversary of Hamas's October 7 attack. The airstrikes aimed at dismantling Iran-backed Hezbollah displaced yet more civilians in Lebanon, where an estimated 1.2 million people have already left their homes. Israel has also intensified attacks in Gaza a year after Hamas's attack. Israel now seems on the brink of war with Iran while locked in a bitter conflict in Gaza. Experts argue that few Israelis or Palestinians believe it will end anytime soon, but security across Israel is heightened with officials on alert for any attacks timed to coincide with the anniversary. Meanwhile, in Iran, airports announced the cancellation of flights over the weekend, a move seen as a precaution against potential Israeli airstrikes targeting Iranian military or nuclear facilities. Now, although those flight restrictions were later lifted after confirming safety conditions, the tension in the region remains palpable. In fact, as we speak, the Biden administration in the United States looks increasingly unable to limit either Israel's brinkmanship with Iran or its ground operations against the militias in Gaza and Lebanon that Tehran supports. The world is closely hoping for stability amidst rising unrest. Here are the finer details. Take a look at the recap of a year in war.
A year since militant group Hamas launched an unprecedented cross-border attack on Israel on October 7, 2023, West Asia is on the brink of an all-out war. Hamas's assault various kibbutz at the Nova Music Festival killed 1,200 Israelis and took 250 hostages. Israel's subsequent retaliation triggered a year of devastation and turmoil across the region and the world.
Allahu Akbar.
365 days since the attack, 105 hostages have returned to Israel, while 72 have been killed.
This is my father, he's still in captivity, and we don't know anything about him since then.
Including 3 killed accidentally by IDF forces operating in Gaza. 97 hostages continue to remain in Hamas's captivity in Gaza even today.
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה. לא במבצע, לא בסבבים, במלחמה. הבוקר חמאס פתח במתקפת פתע רצחני נגד מדינת ישראל ונגד אזרחיה. אנחנו בתוך זה משעות הבוקר המוקדמות.
A week after Hamas's onslaught left Israel's defenses in shambles, Israeli forces began bombing Gaza and limited ground operations into the region. Followed by a full-scale invasion into the region on 27th October. Over 2/3 of Gaza has been destroyed since the war, including schools, hospitals, and more. The WHO reports that only 12 of 36 hospitals in Gaza remain partially functional, leaving over 2 million Palestinians without access to proper health care. After a month of fighting, Israel and Hamas agreed to a Qatar and Egypt brokered temporary ceasefire on 24th November, the only ceasefire in the year-long war. During this 6-day truce, 105 hostages and 240 Palestinian detainees were freed, while several humanitarian aid trucks entered the strip. The conflict resumed on 1st December with the IDF launching their first big ground assault on southern Gaza on the outskirts of Khan Yunis. Since the war began, Iran-backed Yemeni militant group the Houthis' attack on commercial shipping vessels has tormented global trade, restricting crucial shipping routes passing through West Asia. While the US, UK, among other allies have retaliated against the Houthis, the Indian Navy played a significant role in rescuing numerous ships struck by Houthi missiles. Roughly 6 months into the war, the region saw its first major escalation as tensions grew between Israel and Iran after Tel Aviv struck an Iranian embassy in Syria. Iran rained down missiles on Israel, its first attack targeting Israel directly from its own soil. Israel responded to the attack by striking an Iranian airbase. Between May and July, U.S. State Secretary Blinken continued his shuttle diplomacy, along with mediators Qatar and Egypt, to get Israel and Hamas on the negotiation table. While Hamas agreed to a truce proposal in early May, raising hopes, Israeli officials called it off as a ruse. Meanwhile, Israeli forces rescued 4 hostages from Gaza while killing over 200 Palestinians. IDF's massive ground operations in Gaza displaced millions of Gazans, pushing them to the last corner of refuge in Rafah. While Netanyahu makes a controversial trip to the United States, vowing to continue the war until he secures total victory. The ICJ rules Israel's settlement in Gaza and the West Bank as unlawful. Perhaps the most consequential moment in the Israel-Hamas war apart from October 7th occurs. Israel kills Hamas's political chief Ismail Haniyeh in a targeted strike in Tehran, shifting the war into a dangerous new phase. Last month saw the conflict expanding, with Israel now striking Lebanese militant group Hezbollah, targeting their pagers and radios and rigging them with explosives. In a further blow to the group, Hezbollah chief Nasrallah is killed in a barrage of Israeli strikes on Beirut.
In the past 365 days, more than 40,000 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza and thousands more in Lebanon, in a war that has changed West Asia forever. As the Israel-Hamas war enters its 2nd year, the clock is ticking for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who faces varying domestic pressures, from right-wing groups who refuse to participate in ceasefire talks to protests that are demanding hostage release. Meanwhile, his global position continues to decline as he wages a war with no end in sight. Only time will tell what lies ahead for the people of West Asia. Disha Bagchi for NDTV World.
Well, Israel bombed targets in Lebanon and the Gaza Strip on Sunday, ahead of the one-year anniversary of the 7th of October attacks that sparked its war, as Israel's defense minister declared all options were open for retaliation against their arch-enemy Iran. Hezbollah rockets launched late on Sunday got past Israeli air defense systems and landed in Haifa, Israel's third largest city, causing damage to buildings. This is what police have said. But Israeli media are reporting that 10 people were wounded in the rocket strikes in Haifa and the city of Tiberias. But multiple blasts have shaken the southern suburbs of Lebanon's capital, Beirut, amid Israeli airstrikes on the night before the anniversary of the 7th of October Hamas attacks against Israel. The attacks have come after Israel issued new evacuation orders in southern Lebanon. So Israel's bombarded Beirut in what appears to be its heaviest assault yet on the Lebanese capital. It's also the first time that residents of Haifa have seen rockets land inside the city. Well, for further clarity, we have with us from Tel Aviv, journalist Nick Kol-Yohin. Thanks so much, Nick, for making time for us on NDTV. 1 year later, Nick, many on ground say glimmers of hope have now been shredded. Now, Israel and Iran teeter on the edge of all-out war. Take us through the sentiment in Tel Aviv. What's happening where you are?
Israel is marking 1 year anniversary to the most cruel terror attack that happened in Israel and probably in the whole world. This is the biggest tragedy that happened to the Jewish people since the Holocaust. About 1,200 people were slaughtered and 251 were kidnapped. From them, 101 still in the captivity of Hamas. And Israel will commemorate their memory in several different events throughout the country. One of the events will be where the Nova Festival happened, where 393 people, young people that came to dance, were slaughtered in the music festival of Nova. And another major event will be in the Hayarkon Park in Tel Aviv, where the families of the victims of the 7th of October will come to mark this tragic event. And this event will be aired on the Israeli TV, on many other international TV channels as well.
But Nick, you know, many people who've been protesting, they increasingly fear that the fate of the hostages, meanwhile, will be forgotten in the face of the fighting in Lebanon, which continues to escalate. What are you picking up on?
Israel is striving for 1 year now to return all of its hostages. Out of 251 hostages that was taken by the terrorists of Hamas on the 7th of October, 101 women, men, children, elderly are still in the captivity in the tunnels of Gaza. They are almost without air to breathe, in darkness, with almost no food, no water. And their relatives are begging the Israeli government to do much more to bring them back home. Israel's government strategy now is to weaken and to destroy Hamas and Hezbollah, and also it is focusing on the war with Iran, while the families of the hostages asking the government to make a deal now before all the hostages will be dead.
And this as there's a serious risk of all-out war between Israel, Hezbollah and Iran. Nick, it's no secret that both the scale and geographic scope of violence have dramatically increased. Do you believe it's going to get worse before it actually gets any better?
The Middle East is on the brink of a major war. Israel will respond harshly to the second time that Iran is sending hundreds of ballistic missiles towards Israeli cities. One of those missiles almost killed hundreds of children after it hit a school south to Tel Aviv. Just by fortune, the children were already at home. Israel also strives to destroy Hamas and Hezbollah, and also to weaken the Houthis in Yemen. And also Israel is striking in Syria, the militias there, and the transportation of arms from Iran to Hezbollah, and also Israel strikes the militias of Iraq. So all of these can become easily a big war, and now we need to settle it down before it will be too late. And it will be not just a war in Middle East, maybe the whole world will be part of that.
Nick, thanks so much for joining us with your perspective. We will, of course, revert to you for regular updates from Tel Aviv. But this escalation in the Middle East has deeply affected the region, killing thousands, displacing millions. Here's a report looking at the finer details. Listen in.
Israel is marking the first anniversary of the October 7th Hamas attack that prompted the nation's strongest response in decades. Immediately after the attack, the IDF launched airstrikes and a ground invasion in Gaza aimed at dismantling Hamas that continues to this day. A year later, Israel's war with Gaza has spread, creating a dangerous regional crisis. What began as a localized conflict between Israel and Hamas has transformed into a multi-front war. The involvement of key regional players, notably Iran, has heightened tensions, particularly following its recent ballistic missile strike on Israeli targets. Israel is now facing a war from 7 different fronts. The fighting in Gaza remains one of the most significant fronts. Israeli airstrikes continue to target Hamas infrastructure, while ground operations have led to significant casualties. Meanwhile, 97 out of the 250 Israeli hostages captured by Hamas on October 7th are still held in Gaza, with many feared dead. The initial war between Israel and Hamas has seen major escalation with neighboring countries such as Iran. 6 months into the war, tensions grew between Israel and Iran after Iran rained down missiles on Israel in response to Tel Aviv striking the Iranian consulate in Syria. Hamas's top leader Ismail Haniyeh was also killed in Israeli strikes. Last month, Israel struck Lebanese militant group Hezbollah in an attack that saw around 5,000 pagers and radios detonating. As Israel launched its ground invasion in Beirut, Hezbollah fired a barrage of rockets towards Israel. The IDF claims Hezbollah militants have fired over 10,000 rockets across the border since October 8th. Hezbollah strikes have struck deeper into Israeli territory than they have done in any other recent attacks. Schools have closed in many northern areas of Israel, and gatherings have been restricted. The war in Lebanon and Gaza now threatens to spread further after Iran fired nearly 200 missiles at Israel on October 1st. Iran stated that this attack was a response to the killings of Hezbollah leader Nasrallah and Hamas political leader Haniyeh. As tensions continue to rise, both Iran and the international community are preparing for a possible Israeli retaliation in the wake of the massive missile strikes and a fear of a growing regional war. Samia Afsar for NDTV World.
Meanwhile, U.S. efforts to secure a Gaza ceasefire remain stalled after nearly more than a year of fighting now. Iran-backed Houthi rebels continue to attack Red Sea shipping routes as we speak, and now, despite intense U.S.-led diplomacy, the Israel-Hezbollah conflict threatens to flare into an all-out regional war. But with the clock ticking on his administration, U.S. President Joe Biden faces an arc of Middle East crises likely to defy solution before he leaves office in January, and which look all but certain to tarnish his foreign policy legacy, many foreign diplomats and geopolitical watchers argue.
Charles de Gaulle, the French military general and statesman, had once said, "Diplomats are useful only in fair weather. As soon as it rains, they drown in every job." Decades later, de Gaulle's words still resonate in the current geopolitical scenario. As world leaders continue to struggle to find common ground over a ceasefire in Gaza. U.S. efforts to secure a ceasefire has so far yielded no positive results, as Iran-backed Houthi rebels continue to attack the Red Sea shipping, and now the Israel-Hezbollah conflict threatens to escalate into an all-out regional war.
Each of us has to continue to press all of the parties to make the decisions necessary to get this deal over the finish line. It remains, again, the best way to get hostages home, bring relief to people, and also can help us reduce tensions on other fronts.
Experts suggest that the conflict highlights the limits of U.S. power and influence in the Middle East. Despite being Israel's top arms supplier and a strong ally, U.S. President Joe Biden has failed to change Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's mind. The Biden administration has been trying for a year to help broker an Israeli-Hamas ceasefire deal and free hostages taken by the militants in their October 7th attack last year. U.S.'s top diplomat Antony Blinken has traveled to the region nearly 10 times in the past year, and no breakthrough is imminent, according to reports. Many U.S. officials have blamed Hamas for failed negotiations, but some also cite Netanyahu's shifting demands. Qatar, a strong regional force, played a big role in earlier ceasefire negotiations, but has not been able to achieve the desired results. With another front opening in the Middle East and Netanyahu in no mood of declaring a ceasefire, the task of achieving a ceasefire in Gaza seems to be a distant reality and shows how diplomacy has failed the region. With Vishal Vivek, Samia Afsar for NDTV World.
As always, news and updates continue in a moment right after this very short break. Don't go anywhere.
NDTV World Summit 2024, October 21st and 22nd, only on NDTV Network. Stay informed and entertained with the new and updated NDTV News app. You can watch all our channels live, listen to podcasts, read breaking and exclusive news from around the world and more. Download the NDTV app today and get access to the best journalism and storytelling on your smartphone or tablet. The NDTV app. News that matters to you.
I've been reporting on all issues, big and small, from Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, rest of South India, bringing you all the action, all that you need to know, all that you want to know.
The energy of Maximum City is infectious. I bring in that energy in our news coverage from financial capital Mumbai.
India's IT capital is always bustling. It's literally a city that never sleeps. And I keep you ahead on all the Bengaluru buzz.
Covering from the southernmost part of India over the last 23 years, I bring in-depth and 360-degree coverage from the Dravidian heartland.
The land of Mishti is also known for its bitter politics. I have seen much water flow under the Howrah Bridge, covering Bengal in all its vivid colors.
New day, new show, a new experience.
Maldives President Mohammad Muizzu landed in Delhi just late last evening for a 4-day state visit to India and is expected to meet Prime Minister Modi today with a looming economic crisis and an imminent debt repayment on his hands back home. In an interview to an international broadcaster ahead of his visit, Mr. Muizu said he hoped that India would be ready to ease the Maldives burden, and he is expected to request a currency swap arrangement and debt support during bilateral talks at Hyderabad House after he receives a guard of honor at Rashtrapati Bhavan. Let's turn our attention now to the latest explosion in Pakistan. 2 Chinese nationals have been killed after an explosion near Jinnah International Airport in Karachi. The Chinese embassy in Pakistan has said many Pakistani personnel were killed and injured in the blast, which happened around 11 p.m. local time. But the separatist Balochistan Liberation Army, BLA, which has in recent years carried out attacks on Chinese nationals involved in projects, has now claimed responsibility for this attack. But according to Pakistan's Dawn, CID Director General Asif Ejaz Sheikh said nothing was clear at the moment about the nature of the explosion, which has rocked the southern Pakistan city, Karachi. Thank you for investing your time and watching this edition of The World 24/7. We'll keep tracking the latest for you. Do stay tuned.
कि जिसकी सरकार सेंटर में हुई है उसी की सरकार प्रदेश में होती है।
एंटी इनकम्बेंसी को कैसे देख रहे हैं? इनकम्बेंसी नहीं है,
प्रो इनकम्बेंसी।
कांग्रेस आ रही है, भाजपा जा रही है।
Congress is going to form the government in Haryana with a big majority.
From the heart of city in Beirut, a city which is scarred by violence and caught between the crossfire between Israel and Hezbollah. A war which started a year ago between Israel and Hamas has now spilled over to Lebanon. NDTV is on the ground to bring latest updates, in-depth analysis, and how the evolving war has impacted this country. Stay tuned for latest updates.
NDTV World Summit 2024, October 21st and 22nd, only on NDTV Network. Stay informed and entertained with the new and updated NDTV News app. You can watch all our channels live, listen to podcasts, read breaking and exclusive news from around the world and more. Download the NDTV app today and get access to the best journalism and storytelling on your smartphone or tablet. The NDTV app. News that matters to you.
I've been reporting on all issues big and small from Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, rest of South India, bringing you all the action, all that you need to know, all that you want to know.
The energy of Maximum City is infectious. I bring in that energy in our news coverage from financial capital Mumbai.
India's IT capital is always buzz. It's literally a city that never sleeps. And I keep you ahead on all the Bengaluru buzz.
Covering from the southernmost part of India over the last 23 years, I bring in-depth and 360-degree coverage from the Dravidian heartland.
The land of Mishti is also known for its bitter politics. I have seen much water flow under the Howrah Bridge, covering Bengal in all its vivid colors.
New day, new show, a new experience.
Start your day with the news, not views.
We bring you stories that matter
and impact your life.
News that informs and keeps you ahead. From Maximum City, Mumbai,
to the seat of power, Delhi,
NDTV brings you the best breakfast show. Breakfast news on NDTV, 8 a.m. every day.
कि जिसकी सरकार सेंटर में हुई है उसी की सरकार प्रदेश में होती है।
एंटी इनकम्बेंसी को कैसे देख रहे हैं? इनकम्बेंसी नहीं है,
प्रो इनकम्बेंसी।
कांग्रेस आ रही है, भाजपा जा रही है.
Congress is going to form the government in Haryana with a big majority.
Hello everyone, you're watching NDTV's Breakfast Show. I'm Radhika Ramaswamy joining you from Mumbai studios. We also have Kitty joining us from Delhi studios. Kitty from war-struck Lebanon. Ground report to back down south. Actor Siddique joining investigating agency. Before Kerala SIT, we have lots lined up for the next one now.
Absolutely, you rightly pointed that out. There is a lot of stories, of course, lined up in this edition of 8 a.m. For our viewers, we'll be talking about the Israel-Hamas war first year anniversary and actor Siddique case, as well as Maldives president is in India. He's expected to meet Prime Minister Modi today. All that and more in this edition. Let's start with the headlines first. Today marks the one-year anniversary of the October 7 attacks by Hamas on Israel. Israel's offensive against Hamas continues. Possibility of retaliatory airstrikes against Iran also looms large.
NDTV reports from the epicenter of the Middle East conflict. Reports from Beirut in Lebanon, where attacks have escalated over the past few weeks.
Actor Siddique to appear before the SIT looking into Me Too allegations in the Kerala film industry. The veteran actor got interim protection from arrest from the top court after being booked in a rape case.
Maldives President Mohammad Muizzu in India for first bilateral meet. In an interview ahead of the meeting with Prime Minister Modi, President Muizzu says Maldives will never undermine India's security.
And India beat Pakistan by 6 wickets to register their first win in the T20 Women's World Cup.
A win over Pakistan, that in itself always means so much. Parshafali Verma.
Well, we are starting this edition at 8 with a tough focus. Today marks the one-year anniversary of the October 7 attacks by Hamas on Israel, the day that has changed Middle East forever. As the nations reflect on this somber milestone, tensions continue to escalate on multiple fronts. In response to the attacks, Israel launched extensive military operations, including heavy bombing raids in both Gaza and Lebanon. While the possibility of retaliatory airstrikes against Iran also looms large. Security across Israel is heightened, with officials on alert for any attacks timed to coincide with the anniversary. Now, this comes in the wake of a tragic shooting at a bus station in the Negev desert that left 1 person dead and 10 others injured.
That's right, Kitty. Situation still tense in Middle East. In fact, Israel's army chief declaring victory over Hamas's military wing and stating that Israeli force have severely weakened Hezbollah by eliminating its senior leadership. Of course, flight restrictions were there, but now that has been lifted is the information that we are getting. Flight restrictions lifted in Iran after flights were cancelled till 6 this morning. A move seen as a precaution against possible strikes from Israel targeting Iranian military or nuclear facilities. So as a result of this imminent strike, or rather expectation that there could be strike, there were some restrictions on flight, but that has been lifted. So tension, however, in the region remains palpable. Let's go straight across to Ghazali. We believe Ghazali is joining us from Lebanon, which is at the epicenter of the war. But before that, we'll show you this report that we filed.
Charles de Gaulle, the French military general and statesman, had once said, "Diplomats are useful only in fair weather. As soon as it rains, they drown in every job." Decades later, de Gaulle's words still resonate in the current geopolitical scenario. As world leaders continue to struggle to find common ground over a ceasefire in Gaza. U.S. efforts to secure a ceasefire has so far yielded no positive results. as Iran-backed Houthi rebels continue to attack the Red Sea shipping. And now the Israel-Hezbollah conflict threatens to escalate into an all-out regional war.
Each of us has to continue to press all of the parties to make the decisions necessary to get this deal over the finish line. It remains, again, the best way to get hostages home, bring relief to people, and also can help us reduce tensions on other fronts.
Experts suggest that the conflict highlights the limits of U.S. power and influence in the Middle East. Despite being Israel's top arms supplier and a strong ally, U.S. President Joe Biden has failed to change Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's mind. The Biden administration has been trying for a year to help broker an Israeli-Hamas ceasefire deal and free hostages taken by the militants in their October 7th attack last year. U.S.'s top diplomat Antony Blinken has traveled to the region nearly 10 times in the past year, and no breakthrough is imminent, according to reports. Many U.S. officials have blamed Hamas for failed negotiations, but some also cite Netanyahu's shifting demands. Qatar, a strong regional force, played a big role in earlier ceasefire negotiations, but has not been able to achieve the desired results. With another front opening in the Middle East and Netanyahu in no mood of declaring a ceasefire, the task of achieving a ceasefire in Gaza seems to be a distant reality and shows how diplomacy has failed the region. With Vishal Vivek, Samia Afsar for NDTV World.
Ghazali is joining us from Beirut. Ghazali, what is the situation at this point? Of course, you've been sending us reports since last night. Take us through the ground situation at this point. Are there constant attacks still? And have they spread in other parts of Lebanon as well? And any changes as far as the intensity of the attacks are concerned?
See, the place where I'm staying right now is the center of Beirut city, and very close is the airport, and there is an area called Dahiye. Dahiye is the area which is considered a stronghold of Hezbollah. Now that's a mountainous or hilly terrain. Around 7 lakh people used to stay there in that particular area, and that has been completely evacuated due to the intense bombardment from Israel for the last 3-4 days. Now that area is inaccessible, you can't go there. But besides this particular area of Beirut, there are many other areas of Beirut. Even yesterday there was bombardment from Israel. Hezbollah has also been firing rockets, and that was towards the Haifa area of the occupied territory. So the intense bombardment or the exchange of fire has been happening at multiple fronts, not at just one location. The areas close to the border, there we have seen ground combat by the occupied territory forces and Hezbollah. And to control that, to minimize the impact of that, the occupied territory government has been firing rockets into into Beirut and other areas of Beirut. The road towards the airport has been damaged. The road which connects Lebanon and that has been damaged. So there has been a that is why the situation is still remaining.
Okay, all right. Ghazali, you've also informed us that